So I'm in the middle of getting ready for a YouTube video, and I was thinking about something. I just began to think about the connections that we have in our lives and like the friendships that we keep. And I'm sorry if I'm crooked, but I began to ask myself, like, why is it that I continue to try to nurture connections with folks that I know are not tied to my destiny, nurture connections with folks that I know kind of leave me depleted and who don't really add anything to my emotional, mental health? Why do I stay connected to folks where they feed into the fallacy of them actually helping me and providing a sense of security in my life? Like, why am I so interested in nurturing those kind of connections and kind of forcing them to fit in my life when I know in actuality that these people aren't a part of my tribe? This is something that I was talking to my parents about, or my parents were talking to me rather, a few days ago. I realized that I'm a person who I deal with the spirit of rejection. So there's been many times growing up, even with being bullied, being talked about, people just deciding not to like me because they just decided that I thought I was all of that, or they just decided that I just wasn't what they liked. I wasn't their cup of tea. And so internalizing all those things that I heard people say about me growing up, even in most cases when I feel like they didn't even get to know me as a person, they would just say mean things about me. I internalized that, and even now as a young adult, I'm still trying to maneuver through that, through not seeing myself through the hurtful things that they've said about me, but seeing myself through what God says about me, through how God made me. And furthermore, through people who actually get to know me, what they see and what they say about me. And so with that, dealing with the spirit of rejection, I often find myself in these sort of situations where I try my best not to make others feel rejected. So that means when someone says that they want to, hang out with me trying my best in those situations when I can tell that they're a good person and they mean me well, me trying to find a way for them to fit into my schedule, and me trying to find a way to make them feel like I actually want them in my life. In actuality, and I know this may sound horrible, but it's not necessarily like I want them in my life or need them, but I realize that they really like me in their life. So it's like I try to nurture that connection because I don't want them to feel like how I felt. Does that make sense? So me realizing that in the process, me trying to convince myself that they actually are good for me, because they're good people. I'm like, oh my God, they're cool. Like, they've never said anything hurtful. They've never done anything hurtful. Like, I can tell that they genuinely mean me well. In actuality, realizing that me trying to convince myself that they actually fit well in my life, I'm actually just feeding into the fallacy of them being a part of my destiny, when in actuality, it's not. I realize now that there are good people who I will come across who make me laugh, who are cool, but that doesn't mean that they are a part of my tribe. That doesn't mean that they are meant to stay in my life for a season or for a lifetime. Perhaps they could just be good people who like me and who I think are decent, but that doesn't mean that they're supposed to stay in my life and stick with me. I feel like it's so dangerous. It's so dangerous. And I'm sitting here wondering how many of us have found ourselves in these relationships that we forced to become a season or a lifetime, when in actuality we were just supposed to cross paths with the person momentarily. These people were never meant to stay in our lives and stick in our lives, but we forced them to fit because their existence is somewhat convenient for us. Like, I'm sitting here wondering, like, yeah, like, they're cool, they've never done anything hurtful, but does that mean that they should actually be in my life, like, as a staple person? Does that mean that they're supposed to be in a relationship with me? Does that mean that we should be in any sort of covenant? It's very, very dangerous out here, because we can find ourselves sabotaging ourselves by forcing people to fit. It may not always feel like we're forcing a connection. However, if we don't really seek the Lord and like really be like, okay, God, are they supposed to be in my life, then like we can find ourselves in a really, really dangerous space of entertaining and nurturing connections that are not tied to our destiny. And if we're forcing them to fit in our lives, then I can only imagine what we're actually blocking in the process. It's so scary because we think, hey, like, they're good to me. It's not really horrible. Every day has its ups and downs, but they've been good to me. How can this be bad? How can this be deleterious to my actual purpose? But if it's not something that God said was okay, then there's a huge chance that it actually can be inhibiting what God has for you. And it's so scary, like I said, if you're a person who deal with rejection like me, because it's like, I want more than anything, anybody who encounters me, I want them to feel loved. Like, I want them to feel special. I want them to know that their existence matters to me. I don't ever want to be the type of person where people look at him are like, oh my gosh, she hurt my feelings, bro. She's bad news. Like, I always want to make people feel loved. But I feel like God is saying, at what cost? You can make people feel loved without feeding into conversation. At what cost? What I realize is that most people who come into contact with me do find themselves really liking me, male or female, because God is just amazing, and I feel like his love shines in me and through me. So they're gonna like me from the jump. They're gonna love the kid. That's just the gift that God laid inside of me, but that doesn't mean that everyone I meet and everyone who likes me is tied to my purpose. That doesn't mean that they are to be entertained. That doesn't mean that they are to be kept in my life. I just... It's a Duffy affair.